Welcome to episode 8 of West Coast Biased. I am done with my 7-year-old's multi-day birthday. So that took up Friday, Saturday, thus no pod. You went and saw Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, we went down
We
my
both had busy weekends. You had more fun, I imagine.
yeah, and we did Disneyland as well. And I'm telling you, it turns out the only thing that ruins Disneyland is kids. So when you go without kids, it's the happiest place on earth. My gal is Japanese, and in a shocking development, she likes Shohei Ohtani. So we flew down to go see Ohtani play, kind of as a last summer fling getaway until football starts, and then you get very busy doing football things, and then we jumped over to Disneyland for a day. But I'm telling you. You just cannot. I've never seen it because I wasn't in Chicago when Jordan was at his peak. Obviously, I mean, I was growing up. I was in high school and in college, and I was actually there when the Jazz were playing the Bulls. So I saw some of the Jordan stuff, but I was never in Chicago when Jordan was at his peak.
Right.
And that's the only thing that I could compare it to. The amount of just sheer gravitational pull. I've never seen another athlete like Shohei Ohtani. Like when you go down there and you go to a Dodger game and that roster is loaded and they're World Series champs. Everyone's wearing a Dodger jersey. I'm not kidding. 98% of them are Shohei Ohtani jerseys. Occasionally you might see a Freeman. Once in a while you saw a Kershaw. Dude, it is Ohtani and nothing but Ohtani. He is on every billboard. They say when he pitches, half the crowd is Japanese. I bet we ran because I was wearing I was wearing a Japan World Baseball Classic hat. I bet you I ran into 20 people that were from Japan that had flown in just to see him play, and he wasn't even pitching. So
yeah, that's insane.
He's just one of those guys. And football doesn't produce a lot of them because I just think with the helmet, it's more a team sport. But I mean, I to the last time you had a truly just transcendent NFL player, it's been a while, I think, since we've had one of those, and they don't come around very often in other sports. But I'm telling you, if you get a chance to go to LA and see Shohei Ohtani, one, it's fun to watch him play, but again, just seeing the scene around him, you now see why certain teams will pay players that amount of money.
You had a more fun weekend. I think mine will be more nostalgic. I will say an update on my mom's cancer. She rang the bell. She is done with chemo.
Hey,
so we're really excited about that. We're doing a scan here next month to make sure that she is cancer-free, although there is no beating cancer. I mean, you can be cancer-free, but you have to get scans the rest of your life, that whole thing.
But we're looking good.
But a really good sign. And then there aren't many birthdays as a kid. You've talked about this now that your kids are older, to just lean in to some of the kids' stuff. There aren't many birthdays where the kids are old enough to speak, like 2, 3, 4, where it's fun and they verbalize how excited they are about their birthday. My daughter did a countdown for her 7th birthday from like 60 days, 59 days, 58 sleeps, she calls it. So we rented out a gymnastics gym in Vancouver and let her just go hog wild with her friends. So that was a good weekend. I did miss the live broadcast of the Niner game, even a preseason game. I don't do that very often, but I did do that, and I did think it was worth it. Man, she had a great time, and it was really awesome. It was really cool. It was a good weekend.
7's a good age because, like I said, going down to Disney, you see kids that are 3 and they're just miserable and they won't remember anything. 7 to 10's that sweet spot where they're old enough to kind of keep it together, but also you can get credit as a parent, be like, hey, you remember when I took you? So shut up and do what I say. So it's that sweet spot. 7 to 10, that's the golden age there. So good for you for being Father of the Year.
She was feeling herself after the birthday party yesterday. She left our house to go to a friend's house without asking. So we were like, hey, we went in separate rooms. We're looking around. She's gone. Not in the house. Nowhere in the house. We're looking throughout the house and realized that she has gone to her friend's house and told the friend's family, my parents said I could play.
Yeah.
So that is her go-to spot. So we did look there right away and knock on the door. And sure enough, she was there playing. And so she got in trouble already. So she's been grounded for 1 day out of her 2 days of being 7. But her vibes check is all the way up. She's thrilled about being 7, even though she got herself in some trouble. This is a vibes check episode for all the NFL teams and college football teams that we cover, the West Coast teams, the Seahawks, the Niners, the Ducks, the Beavers, the Huskies. We'll get into some Raiders, maybe some USC, UCLA. But I want to start with the team to the north, whose vibe checks Suk, all the way up. Things could not be better if you're a Seahawks fan. I know Shohei Ohtani is a huge deal. We're not too far away from Gray Zabel jerseys being the thing in Seattle. They are over the moon about their first round pick. Torrey Horton looks like he's going to be wide receiver number 3 with a bullet. Outside of Sam Darnold, who you're still maybe trying to protect with some play action, everything looks absolutely incredible up in Seattle, and their fan base could not be more excited about where things are at.
No, again, and let's just state for the record, preseason, everyone, deep breath.
Smash the Chiefs. It's over. Super Bowl. Here we come.
Right. And the Chiefs did play a smattering of some starters. But for the most part, again, those were backups. But hey, this is when you're in these sorts of games, you can only play against who you're playing against, right? And there were some starters. And so this was our first look at really the first team Seattle offense, right? We got Sam Darnold in there, and he went 4 for 4, although he was kind of an aftermath. This was about the run game. And I mean, again, from an offensive and really honestly a defensive standpoint, I guess the defense has just looked good. The defense looks swarming. I think you're very happy with the depth in the secondary. But again, going back to the offense, our first real look at it, it looks sharp. It looks like they have 3, possibly 4 running backs. I think we do. The writing's on the wall, and there was some talk about this going in. Zach is going to end up being running back 1 if he hasn't just come out and said already. Charbonnet is their best back. He just is. He's more available. I think he's the more explosive runner. He's going to be the guy. But when you see this old line working now, and you see some of the holes, and you see those gap schemes working, and then you go into the play action, I just think that there's a lot to like. And this is what you brought in Kubiak to do. This is why you brought in this offense, to pair that run game with protecting Sam Darnold. I still don't think this offensive line is elite. No. But that's the beauty part in an offense like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be elite. And so if you get Sam Darnold that is protected, if you get a run game that gets going like this, Sam Darnold proved last year. Now, granted, we don't have the weapons that Minnesota has, but you do have the makings of, I think, of a really solid core of skilled players. But if this offensive line can get the run game going the way it has in this preseason, and it looks anything close to what we saw in those first 2 drives against Kansas City, again, vibe check sky high. Remember, this is a team that has been a game away from the playoffs. And I think this defense is going to be nasty. I mean, you talk to people. Some people think this could be a top 5, top 6 type defense in the NFL. And you pair that with an offense that doesn't have to be great. If you pair this with a top 15 offense, and Sam Darnold is a Sam Darnold from last year, this team will be a playoff team. I don't know if it's a contender. You look at the elite teams. I'm not certain that they're there. I'm not going to go off of 2 preseason games, but dude, it's all you can do is keep checking boxes in the offseason, right? You just go through and you say, hey, we passed this test. And if you pass enough tests, then you get into the postseason, right? And then you got a whole new test to go once you get there. But so far, I think the offseason passed the test. Preseason 1 passed, preseason 2, and it's getting better with each one. So vibe checks for Seattle right now. It looks amazing. And then again, health. Can you keep everyone healthy? Because especially on the offensive line, although you're starting to develop some depth on the inside, you can't afford to have Abe Lucas out. You can't afford to lose. Well, certainly at this point, you can't afford to lose Zabel, who really does look like a home run pick for them. You can't afford to lose people if you're Seattle. And
sure.
And that's every team in the NFL.
Well, Nwosu passed his physical. That's huge for that linebacking core. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 4 good running backs, and you go into this offseason and you go, okay, what does Clint Kubiak's offense look like? And side note, can he kind of elevate the offensive line by kind of masking and hiding some things? You talked about that in the difference between a gap scheme and an outside outside zone scheme a couple of weeks ago, that can kind of elevate your protection. It can kind of elevate your blocking. And it looks like, by all accounts, it has. This Seahawks offensive line, particularly on the interior, has been really, really bad the last few years. And terrible. I think we both thought Geno Smith was actually much better than people give him credit for. And a lot of it was just he wasn't protected. And I think this offensive line early, if you're looking, again, to check boxes, they've looked really good. Gray Zabel looks like he's solidified some things on the inside. Those tackles got to stay healthy. That's been the case the last couple of years. but I think that's a really good sign. And then the running backs, Kenneth Walker has been banged up off and on his whole career. Everybody knows what Charbonnet is. So do they have depth? Well, George Halani's been a revelation. He averaged almost 10 yards a carry again this
Looks
week.
Great.
And then Damian Martinez was an absolute steal in the 7th round, and he looked solid as well, especially if that's your 4th back. Yeah. Those are really good signs. And if your offensive line can run the football, you would expect that, one, they're good enough to pass block pretty well, and that the play action should be effective enough that Sam Darnold feels pretty comfortable back there. Now, throw in the fact that Jackson Smith-Njigba looks like a potential wide receiver 1 and a potential perennial Pro Bowl guy in the future, and really even starting this year potentially. Elijah Arroyo has looked the part as a 2nd-round pick this year. Torrey Horton looks like he's going to be a starter. Everything seems to be falling into place. Yep. Again, this is vibes check. This is not we're crowning a Super Bowl champion. No. But if you're a Seahawks fan, you feel infinitely better than you did 2 weeks ago when you said, I don't know about our offensive line. Now you say, hey, I've got some optimism about the offensive line. You go, I don't know about our receiver depth. Okay, I've got optimism there. What does Clint Kubiak's system look like? Well, man, it sure looks like it fits our running game pretty well. They ran for 270 yards in a preseason game. That's incredible. So really good signs from the Seahawks. And again, if we're doing a vibes check, it's all the way up. Their biggest rival, and me being a Niner fan, things are really rough in the Bay. I know we have to be faithful to the Bay. That's what we say, FTTB, faithful to the Bay. Yeah. But it's hard to have much faith when you're this banged up. The majority of their rookies are now hurt. They are expecting to potentially start 2 rookies in the defensive backfield, 3 rookies along the defensive line. The offensive line is in the interior is a work in progress. Dominic Pooney got hurt this week. 4 of their top 5 wide receivers are out. 4 of their 6 running backs are out, so they're going to have to sign one. We talked about it multiple times. This team has star power. They need to stay healthy. They might be the most banged up team in the NFL already in week 2 of the preseason.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on in the water down in San Francisco. I don't know if there's some sort of Scooby-Doo poison fog that has come over, or Shanahan sold his soul for a Super Bowl and the devil crawfished him and didn't give him one. And now the devil's come to take his due. But it certainly feels that I can't remember a team this good being this snake bitten, right? Like if we go back even over the last 5 years, right? I can honestly say, to me, the only thing that has kept the 49ers from winning a Super Bowl is injuries. And it's like when they're healthy, it's a Super Bowl contending team, and they've been a play short twice. And then stuff falls apart. I mean, Brock Purdy can't grip a football in the middle of a playoff game, right? And we're like, what is going on there? Oh, it turns out there's a nerve thing in there. It's just, you've got the best running back in football when he's healthy, but is he going to be healthy? Receivers going down. You sign Ayuk to that big deal, and then he goes out and tears his ACL. Ricky Pearsall, who you draft to be Debo's replacement, gets shot in the chest. It's like, what? And then,
Greenlaw shuts down Travis Kelce in a Super Bowl. It looks like the Niners have an answer. He tears his Achilles jogging onto the field.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. And so we were really hoping this year that it would get off to a good start, and it needed to get off to a good start, and it has not. And again, preseason, let's not buy too much into it, but Mikael Williams not being able to go. CJ West got pushed all over the field and was getting bullied. I mean, people were putting hands on that guy. And when we talked about this, like in camp, they needed him to be good. They needed him
Collins.
Yes, they needed him to be a marquee player. And so far, it looked pretty good in camp. But look, when the lights have come on, CJ West is getting blown off the ball, and you can't have that. So, and then you throw in the fact again that you're already down, 3 or 4 tailbacks, and McCaffrey hasn't gotten much work because, again, they're trying to rest him because the whole idea is they need him in January, not now. And they tell us that he's good. They tell us that it's the same Christian McCaffrey, but we don't know because we haven't seen it. And now Pooney goes down, and hopefully that's not a big deal. It's just, you couldn't have a worse start for the 49ers. And the one good thing I'll say is Pearsall with the Purdy connection, that looked pretty good. I mean, Pearsall had 4 catches on that first drive. So, with Ayuk being out, and who knows what's going on with the Juwan Jennings, they tell us again that that's not a big deal. They dealt with it last year, but I don't like when I hear calf, I think Achilles. So we'll see. They need Ricky Pearsall and they need George Kittle in the worst possible way. So I guess if you want a positive vibe, Pearsall, Kittle, McCaffrey, Purdy, maybe, but yeah, it's
just name all the white guys:
all
Shanahan,
the
Lynch, Brock Purdy, CMC, Pearsall, George Kittle.
Yeah, there has to be an inverse in the world, right? Like yin and yang. So Seattle right now is feeling themselves, and the 49ers are licking wounds. And maybe we get 6 weeks into this, and Ayuk, right? That's roughly about what they're thinking. He'll come off the pup after 4 weeks. Practice for a couple, so maybe week 6, week 7. So if you're the 49ers, maybe this is just, you tread water and you see if you can get into the back half of the season and then try to work your way into the postseason and see what happens. But when you're this beat up early, it usually is. Guys tend to not get healthier as the season goes on. So it's if you're a 49er fan, and apologies to you, this is it's shaping up to be a rough go, but very early. This, like I said, just vibes check, but not a lot of feel goods right now with the 49ers.
I was listening to a podcast of a preview, and this was even before Pooney got hurt, with Robert Mays on The Athletic, and he has beat reporters on from each of the teams, and they talk about where the team is at. And he went through every position group. So quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line, D-line, linebacker, defensive backfield. Either the Niners were planning on playing or starting potentially 2 rookies at each layer, or the guy at that position hasn't really played. Quarterback, Brock Purdy. Running back, CMC, 4 injuries. Receiver, 4 of 5 guys hurt. Ricky Pearsall, who's their healthy guy, missed the summer with an injury. The offensive line, already banged up. Pooney's now hurt. There's questions along the interior. And Trent Williams doesn't really do a whole lot in preseason. Defensive line, multiple rookies expected to start. And by the way, Williams and West have already been banged up. Nick Bosa, not really playing because, again, you're protecting him. Fred Warner, you're protecting him. Linebacker, you're potentially playing a rookie there. 2 defensive backs are expected to be rookies, and Malik Mustafa, like Brandon Ayuk, isn't expected back now until week 6. That covers it. Oh, yeah, and by the way, you got a kicker who is a roller coaster ride that you've somehow decided.
No, they say he's fine. I Shanahan said he's got all the confidence in the world. It's bounce back.
You somehow have to invest further in this guy because you took him in the 3rd round, and so now you have to pretend like everything's good and put lipstick on that pig and say everything's okay. It's not. When your kicker, when Jake Moody is the highlight of your win, and by the way, they won. Here's what's crazy. They won their preseason game. Not that matters, but they won on a Jake Moody field goal. The fact that Jake Moody is the big positive takeaway for the 49ers, and by the way, he missed a kick in that game, that's not a good sign. Flipping over, they played the Raiders. They beat them 22-19. I just want to touch on Ashton Jeanty real quick. Last week, the guy couldn't do anything, right? Supposedly, that was the takeaway. He had negative yards rushing. I ran for more yards in my career than Ashton Jeanty. All that whole thing. Turns out, you know what? This Ashton Jeanty guy, 1st-round pick, might be pretty good. He runs over Diamador Lenore. He looks the part. And this is just a reminder. It's just kind of put that pin in there. Whether you look great in week 1 in preseason or week 2 or whatever, it's still the preseason. And guys are going to have their ups and downs. And a lot of times there's little issues that come up that people think, oh, Jeanty's numbers look bad. Don't trust a box score. They're the Cleveland reporters, and we'll get to that next year. But the Cleveland reporters have been reporting the quarterback statistics from each practice. Well, I listened to a podcast and they said one of the plays that, Gabriel on the day, he threw a pick 6. He actually checked into the right read. The receiver thought he was checking into something else that changed his route. So Gabriel threw what should have been a touchdown pass. And instead, because the receiver ran the wrong route, the safety came over the top, picked it, and housed it. And the reporters all reported Dylan Gabriel threw a pick 6. The coaches said Dylan Gabriel did a great job on that play. He saw something in the way that they were attacking him defensively and actually checked into the right read, and the receiver just ran the wrong route. So they gave him kind of a attaboy on a play that was a pick 6 that the reporters said is a disaster. We don't see the whole picture, especially with running backs at times, especially with quarterbacks. And Ashton Jeanty looks like it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and this is, I've seen now we take you to, people do stats and people are actually doing wins and losses in practices, like joint scrimmages, which is, again, it's insanity. There's a reason why, like, you don't know who's working with who. You don't know Dude, there is times where you have guys that are in there that have no. I mean, I've been in those situations where you're getting thrown in. And all of a sudden, hey, we need a right guard. I'm like, well, I haven't played guard. Well, you're playing it today, and you're in there, and I'm hearing one thing, and I'm turning to my center, and he doesn't know what he's doing. We used to call those things Thunderdome. It's like the only thing you're missing is the pig's head in the backfield to trip on, because it really can be quite chaotic. It's practice, and so you don't know what sort of chemistry is going on. By the way, you don't know if the defense has seen this same play 1,000 times. If we've got a check, right? If we have an audible check and we're going from an outside, run scheme, and now we're doing a quick out, right? Because we don't like the look of it. And our audible, whatever we're coming up with, the Peyton Manning, Omaha, we're like, check, razor 23. Well, the defense has heard that 1,000 times. Meanwhile, I got the slot corner that goes, okay, I know what's coming here. And he jumps a route. Well, again, good for that guy for jumping that route, but he also knows the play because he sees it in practice every time. Right. So is that on the quarterback? No, he checked into the right thing and he threw the ball where it should have gone. It's just the DB knew what was coming. So it's like tipping your pitches. So there's all these sorts of things that go on in these practices where it really doesn't give you a great indicator as an outsider of what's going on. That's why, trust coaches. When you see a coach that's like, dude, trust me, no one is playing a starter for like personal grudges reasons or financial reasons. If the backup or the third string guy is the better player, he will play. I go back to it all the time. And my favorite one of these, and I think I've even references on one of our first shows, was Mike Zimmer a number of years ago when he was in Minnesota and he didn't have a quarterback. His quarterbacks were struggling. And they had Kellen Mond, the kid out of Texas A&M, and one reporter goes, well, why have you thought about playing Kellen Mond? And Zimmer goes, no.
Nope.
And the reporter goes, why? And Zimmer goes, because I've seen him practice.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so you can sit here and be like, well, he's a big athletic guy. And I saw this, report. Trust me, if a coach thinks a player can help him win, he will be in there. I know there's a lot of, right now people are like, oh, Joe Flacco is the starter in Cleveland. They just named him. Yeah. He was always going to be the starter. Right. Nothing that was going to happen in these 2 preseason games was going to change that. Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel could have thrown 7 touchdown passes in one of those games and would have been against guys that aren't going to be on NFL rosters or certainly not going to be starting. And it wasn't going to change the fact that Joe Flacco is the starter.
Whose roster spot was in question? It wasn't Flacco's, it wasn't Gabriel's, and it wasn't Sanders. It's Kenny Pickett. If Shedeur Sanders plays well enough that they think he's worth a flyer,
Pickett's gone.
Pickett's gone. If he looks like crap or causes any problems, that that was his reputation. Not that that's been the case. Then so Pickett stays and Sanders is gone. That's it.
So the Raiders, like the 1 year time with Ashton Genty, that play where he got drugged down from behind twice. I think he had 3 carries in that first game, and 2 of them he literally had to mash the spin button the moment he got the ball. He had to guide his feet.
Right.
Okay. Well, here's a downhill bowling ball. He's not Barry Sanders. Right. No one's Barry Sanders. And what do you want the guy to do when you're 6 yards in the backfield and you take the handoff and there's a guy at your feet? Well, hey, look what happens when he actually gets a head of steam. Oh, and by the way, Aiden O'Connell is not going to be his quarterback because he looks terrible. So it'll look a little better when it's Geno Smith. It'll look a little bit better when it's a real offense. And so, yeah, it's just preseason stuff. Just everyone remember. Vibes check, and that's fine. That's what we're here for, vibes check. And Caleb Williams was another great example of this, right? All we heard out of the Chicago camp is that Caleb Williams looked terrible. I mean, that was from everybody. Even Ben Johnson. Right. Yeah. Even Ben Johnson was like, hey, he's not where we need him to be. And he doesn't play in the first 2 because they played in the Hall of Fame game. And people were like, well, he's being, I remember Colin Cowherd was like, well, it sounds like they're protecting him. They don't want him to look terrible. And, Caleb Williams is the sky's falling. He looked great. Comes out in the preseason game and looked amazing. And now we've got people like, well, Caleb Williams, look out. Okay.
What a difference right? 11 snaps makes in a preseason game.
All of that stuff we heard about him struggling, dude, that's not fake. Dude, he wasn't looking good. Right. And so now because he did this, well, first off, it doesn't mean he was terrible before, and it doesn't mean that everything's fine now. The truth lies somewhere in the middle of those things, but this is the kind of the chaotic nature that we can get. So if we're going off that, Caleb Williams, Super Bowl champion, and by the way, Shedeur Sanders should be starting for like 17 NFL teams. And
there was one funny takeaway from that Bears game, and it was a Greg Olsen faux pas. I don't know if you caught it. So coaches will tell you things about their team when you're
Yeah,
doing a preview or when you're prepping for a game.
Let's keep it quiet.
One, you're supposed to add to the broadcast, and then there's some things you're not supposed to say. Greg Olson said, well, Ben Johnson told me he thinks Luther Burden's probably going to end up being better than Roma Dunze or DJ Moore. And you could tell in the moment, it was one of those like, oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to do that out loud. Good sign for Luther Burden, who had an inconsistent year last year, but the year before was excellent. Guess what? The Missouri offense was better 2 years ago, and then last year they struggled a little bit. But Luther Burden's got a chance to be a good one, and the Bears, man, just weapons everywhere.
Yep. So as long as Caleb, looks okay, that should be. They've given him every chance to succeed. Completely rebuilt the offensive line, spent their 2 highest draft capital on a tight end and another receiver, which they already had. So, and now you got Ben Johnson. There's no excuses. This is go time for Caleb Williams and bad. And this is how quickly it changes. Everything in Chicago is bad vibes after 11 snaps. Nothing but good vibes. You're riding high in Chicago right now. And that's how quickly this stuff can change. Well, it's like you wake up, you feel great, and you're like, oh, it's going to be a great day. You walk outside, you got a flat tire. All of a sudden your vibes are, and that's kind of the way the NFL preseason goes. Things can change very, very quickly.
Generally speaking, from what you've seen from the Niners and Seahawks, do you add or subtract? Like if you're doing the wins, losses, over, under, to me, honestly, just because of the injuries for the Niners, that changes things for me. I would have them winning 1 or 2 fewer games this year. Not because they looked like this in the preseason. I'm concerned about the number of injuries. When rookies miss time, they tend to get really far behind. And the Niners have multiple rookies behind. On the flip side, the Seahawks' big question for me was the interior of their offensive line. It does look like they mesh well with Clint Kubiak, and maybe I think they're a game better. But do you feel that way, or do you think that's an overreaction? Am I overreacting to the vibes?
No, I mean, I see where you're going. Does
it move the needle at all? Is I guess what I'm getting at.
It for me, wins and losses. I'm more of a range guy, right? So when I look at Seattle and I said going into the season, I think their floor is 8 games. Right. They're not going to be worse than they have in the previous years. Now, injuries can happen and funky, but this is an 8-win team at worst. At best, I think this is a 12-win team. I think this is a playoff team. So when I watch what Seattle's doing, it just kind of confirms on my high end. And San Francisco, I'd say the same thing. I thought they were kind of in that same, but I guess I was nervous about San Francisco with one specific thing. And again, that was, new faces and injuries. So when I see kind of what's coming out of San Francisco, it more just kind of takes it from what I think is the high end and it shoves it down. Because I think most teams in the NFL, unless we're talking about the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, the really elite squads, right? Most teams are going to be in that 8 to 12 range. And it's close game here, injury there. And so it just kind of moves it. So yeah, I'm with you where I don't know if it makes a game or 2 difference. I just would say I would slide my confidence meter for Seattle up a little bit, and my confidence meter for the San Francisco 49ers slides down a little bit, even though there's nothing necessarily glaring. But if we're going to say out west, if you want one thing that could really move the lead, it's Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford came back to practice today. I think if Matthew Stafford's back is okay, and that's a big fat if, I think the Rams are a Super Bowl team. I really do. I think that if he is healthy, to me, I put the Rams where I put the Eagles, where I put the Bills. I think they're that. I think that's a Super Bowl team, but that's one guy, and it's an old ass back that's acting up a lot. So there's a few players and mostly quarterbacks that really slides. You can go from maybe a game or 2 to really making a huge difference. And you can lose an old lineman, you can lose a receiver, but you can't win in this league without consistent quarterback play and elite play. And I guess that's the one thing if you're San Francisco that you're trying to hold on to is you think you have elite-ish quarterback play.
Tier 2.
Solid tier 2. Solid tier 2.
The Niners are favored against the Seahawks in Seattle on week 1.
I'm going to go ahead.
It's only 1.5.
I would go ahead and I would take Seattle. And again, we'll see how things go in the rest in camp, because maybe San Francisco going into week 1 and maybe Jennings is back and everything's fine. And we're like, but like I said, just based off vibes and two teams that I think I kind of put in the same category. Right now, I will gladly take Seattle in some points at home.
Well, especially we now know there's some injuries that are going to impact that week one.
Absolutely.
Like we're starting to get into that territory. So
yeah,
it's surprising. That game should probably be pick'em right now, just because of all the things going on. But
and
whatever.
the thing to remember is Seattle is no longer a tough place to play. And that's one of the things that McDonald has talked about, trying to kind of kind of shape.
Recapture. Yeah.
You know, that for a while there, that was a hornet's nest. That was one of the toughest places to play in football. And if you look over the last couple of years, it really isn't. It is no longer this look out when you come to Pacific Northwest, and they're talking about trying to get back to that. And I think Seattle is going to surprise some people. I really do. I was
are going to become the Zabelites, and they're going to show out in full force week one, Suk.
Like I said, I don't know if Seattle's A game is good enough to really be a contender. But again, go back and look at this Kubiak offense last year with the Saints, and this was not a good offense, but for a couple weeks, dude, he can put together some stuff, and you can muddle things up in the middle, and there's some weapons there, and I'm just not certain with this O-line and with these receivers and with this quarterback, when it's 3rd and 7 and it's 3rd and 8 in big moments, that you can drop back and you can trust Sam Darnold. Couldn't last year with Minnesota. Remember in the game against Detroit, it just the wheels kind of came off. So I'm high. It's funny. I'm higher vibes check right now on Seattle than I am San Francisco. But if you ask me who I think has maybe the bigger, like the higher ceiling, if everything were to go right,
it's still the Niners.
It's still the Niners.
It's still the Niners. If they get healthy, they have so much star power.
But I'm bullish on Seattle. I think Seattle, especially if this defense is what I think it's going to be, I think this is going to be a really, really tough out in this division. But if we're going division, I'm still a Rams. If Stafford's healthy, this is the Rams division. But that's, you want to talk about injury concerns, that may be the biggest if, and to me, it might be the biggest if in all of the NFL.
Yeah. College football vibes check. The Oregon Ducks, high expectations this year. Last week, a little bit of a negative blip. Trey McNutt, the 5-star freshman, who by all accounts has been a star early in camp, he's hurt, broke his leg, and is out for the season. Jerion Dickey has been suspended indefinitely. I've said both on my recruiting show, I've written it, I've talked about it in guest appearances. I said, unless I saw Jerion Dickey in uniform that day for practice or a game, I wouldn't count on him.
You haven't seen it for a while.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I hope he figures it out. He's not a bad kid. He lacks maturity. I addressed that for a whole segment on my radio show. No need to go over it again. Wishing Jerion the best. I hope he figures it out, because what an immense talent. Suk, I got to be honest, we haven't heard a ton coming out of Eugene in terms of where the team is at, but I do think the wide receiver group is a question. I do think that, the more guys go down, the less opportunities you have for somebody to develop into a star. So Jerion Dickey's just another guy that now isn't going to be that guy. Evan Stewart's out. DeCorian Moore, by all accounts, looks great as a freshman, but they don't have a ton of depth there. I have heard that the running back group is pretty deep, but maybe Mekhi Hughes isn't the star they thought he was. We still haven't heard a definitive prediction on the quarterback battle. Mm-hmm. I don't think, and we talked about this with like ceiling with some of the NFL teams, with the Seahawks and Niners. If you were to ask me, I think the Ducks have a really high floor. The floor has not changed for me at all in fall camp. I think the floor is probably 8 wins. If there's injuries and it's a disaster, I think it's far more likely they win 9, 10, 11 games. I mean, I think that's who they are. But when you aren't 100% married to who your quarterback is yet, or maybe they are privately and they're not saying, and you've got questions about a star running back, you've got questions about receiver depth, you've got 2 new defensive tackles, I do think national championship this year might be out of reach for this group. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't put it in the realm of likely expectations. It would surprise me if all the things clicked for them to get to that point. They need the receiving core to emerge, and probably 3 different guys to emerge, including a true freshman. They need their running backs to stay healthy and all deliver. Noah Whittington, Mekhi Hughes, some of the depth behind them. They need Dante Moore or Austin Novosad to hit the ground running and be a star. And their defensive tackle situation needs to be figured out. That's not impossible, especially in college football with this schedule. but it is a lot of boxes to check to get up there with the Clemsons and Texases and Alabamas and Georgias of the world.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think when you're where Oregon's at, the assumption is just every year, right? Rinse and repeat. Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Texas, but
Penn State, yeah.
Penn State. But one, let's just say we're not certain that Oregon is quite there yet. We feel like they're right on the precipice of that. But one thing that we've mentioned about most of those teams, with the exception of Penn State, those are teams that have won national titles. Texas hasn't. Although they, we talk all the time, like, oh, is Texas back? Even they get some flack for it. So Oregon is on the precipice, I think, of being one of those, but certainly they're an elite team. But of all those teams, Clemson had down years. Alabama has had down years. Alabama had a down year last year, right? Texas certainly has taken their lumps. God knows Penn State has. Ohio State, not really. Ohio State just kind of is Ohio State right now. But I mean,
Michigan won it 2 years ago, and then last year was roughly 500 or right around that margin, around that mark.
The idea that this is always going to be this steady climb, in reality, it's probably more mountain climbery, kind of the price is right, kind of up, down. And I'm with you. You're asking a lot. When we were talking about the 49ers, you kind of went through everything that all the boxes that needed to be checked. It's a lot of boxes to check. And I think you could say that about Oregon. We don't know. We hear good things about Dante Moore. But how much of that is just what coaches kind of tell people that come and visit? When's the last time you heard someone go into camp, a Josh Pate or someone that came out of there, Yogi Roth? I mean, look, and I love these guys. They do a great job. I listen to both of them.
They do a good job. I really like Yogi in particular.
I do too, but they're both cheerleaders. Like, they just are. Like,
there's
if you
some
go
of that,
you go to a pro, I would be too, man. Because I go to a program and I listen to Dan Lanning, I listen to the coaching staff, and they talk up a kid, and I don't really get to see the kid, right? I just get to see him a handful of snaps in practice. Why wouldn't I come out of there thinking, oh yeah, man, this guy's going to be great? Like, you very rarely do you leave a program like Clemson or Ohio State or Oregon thinking to yourself, well, this is going to be the quarterback that's Kyle McCord, right? Kyle McCord had this at Ohio State, and McCord kind of stunk when he was at Ohio State. They ran him out of town, whether it was fair or not. So
right.
I do think those are all legitimate questions. Question at running back, is there a big play guy? You like the depth, but is it by committee? We don't know about Dante Moore. 3 new offensive linemen, although all
that should be a strength. I mean, we feel pretty good there.
We feel pretty good. But again, not having played together, you are plopping 3 brand new players to the program this year. And they're saying go. Might take a little bit to mesh early. We saw it last year.
Continuity is the magic elixir for offensive line. It just is.
It is. Yeah. And the best receiver that you have that we're here is probably a true freshman.
Now, and your tight end.
And your tight end, right? So, Sadiq, I was listening to Dane Brugler, who I think, speaking of someone who I think a lot of, he thinks Sadiq could be the best tight end in the country. So
I think he is. Yeah.
You want to talk about a guy that you want to circle that say will be a star midway through the season for Oregon? Just circle Kenyon Sadiq. That guy is that's the real deal right there. So I do think it's fair to say that there are more question marks, and not that they can't be answered. But in the world of college football, where we expect a team like Oregon to be a 1-loss or an undefeated team, they're the undefeated number 1 team in the country last year. So if this team loses a nail biter to Penn State and gets nicked by USC or UW at the end of the year, is this season like, oh, what happened to him? And that's just, and Dabo Swinney talks about this a lot at Clemson. It's just, when you set a certain standard, it's hard to live up to that every single year. Caleb DeBoer down to Alabama. Oh, he's, fire his ass. And he's not Nick Saban. And now all of a sudden people are saying Alabama could be the best team in the country this year. Give it time, give it patience. And I think Oregon may have some growing pains early. The nice part is their schedule is very soft. Outside of that Penn State game, and I've said many times, even if you lose to Penn State, no big deal. I just think by the end of the year, this might be a different Oregon team than what we see early. So if it doesn't look great early on, and you're beating teams, but you're not blowing them out, and the running game isn't quite clicking, and maybe Dante Moore doesn't look like, 2 of the best quarterbacks we've seen in college football the last 3 years with the quarterbacks you've had at Oregon, don't panic. It's this may be a little more of a work in progress. But the depth on the team and the recruiting profile and the way you're going, the depth of this team should end up being the strength of it. And as we get deeper into the year, what happens? That depth starts to show out. So I'm bullish on Oregon at the end of the year, but I'm with you that I don't know if national championship is. I don't know if that's the ceiling of this football team. I think you're a year out from that.
I think who they are. I think who they are, and I'll draw the comparisons for everybody. I think they're last year's Penn State team.
Yeah,
they have a highly rated potential NFL prospect at quarterback who just hasn't put it all together yet. They have two really good running backs. Penn State had two really good running backs, Whittington and Hughes. They have Singleton and Allen. A really good offensive line. Their best weapon as far as a pass catcher is a tight end, Tyler Warren, Kenyon Sadiq. They're not the same, but people love them. Real serious questions at wide receiver. That was Penn State last year. On the other side of the ball, a lot of faith in their edge rushers. Oregon has a ton of faith in Mateo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti. They have a really good but not elite secondary. And they've got some real thumpers in the middle. This is a lot like last year's Penn State team. And I'll be honest, watching last year's Penn State team, even going into that Big Ten title game, there was no part of me, not for 1 second, that thought Penn State, if they put it all together, could win the national title. They just weren't explosive enough. Yeah. They just weren't there. And that's kind of what I think of this Oregon team. I kind of think, and I'm not sure how everything's going to line up next year, but this feels like a team, a lot of teams, the year after they break in the star prospect at quarterback is the year they really push. The problem is this offensive line's kind of ready to go now. Yeah. The edge rushers are ready to go now. But the receiving core, there's nobody. I don't care if you're the most optimistic of Oregon fan. You cannot tell me that the receiving core this year will be better than next year's group. It just can't be.
It can't
because almost everybody's coming back, and DeCorian Moore is going to be a year older. So you're kind of too young at receiver. You've got a really good O-line. You've got a lot of talent at quarterback, but it's unproven. And by the way, people think that doesn't really matter. The first time Dante Moore is in a close game in the fourth quarter will be the first time he's ever been in a close game in the fourth quarter in his college career. There are just hurdles you have to clear to get to being a national champion. And there's just a lot that's not proven. I'll go even one further. And I've talked to a lot of receivers about this. Until you're an alpha receiver and everyone knows you're getting the ball and you catch it anyway, doesn't matter how much you flash as wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, until you're the focal point of that defense, for that defense, and you're still getting 100 yards, you haven't proven it. And so as much as Kenyon Sadiq looks the part, and everybody thinks he'll be that guy, and by the way, he's an awesome NFL prospect. I'm not taking a single thing away from him, but he's never been, ever, at any point, the focal point of a defense where they go, we have to stop him. He's essentially their number one pass catcher, and the dude still has 80, 90, 100 yards in a tutty. We haven't seen him do it. There's just a lot of hurdles that in real life football, an offensive line coming together and communicating. There's just a lot of hurdles still with this Oregon team that we don't go, okay, these are all returning guys. We know they can do it. We don't, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And when you have that many different hurdles that you've never cleared before, doesn't mean you can't do it, but you just have to clear all of those hurdles in a row without tripping over one. A lot of times that's really tough to do. And I think, like I've said a couple of times now, they have enough boxes that they have to check, that they'd have to check to be a national title team, that I just think are really tough hurdles. And they're maybe tougher in real life than they look on paper. Yeah. And I think because of that, I think they're a college football playoff team. I do. But I think there might be a bigger gap this year in who they are. And they've got a ton of talent. It's just unproven talent. They might have more raw talent, but I think there might be a bigger gap in what they can deliver as a high end this year than even last year. I think the high end of this team might be just short of last year's because there are some questions, some really key spots.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Oregon State, no major update here. Malik Murphy looks great. He does look great when there's no pass rush. What does Oregon State's defense not have? A pass rush. They had 7 sacks as a team all of last year. So Malik Murphy, listen, every quarterback is better in a clean pocket than when things get muddy. But there are guys who have a bigger gap. And Malik Murphy's that guy. When the pocket's clean, he can look like a top 10, 15 passer in the country. When the pocket gets muddy, he's the 99th rated passer in PFF. He becomes, and that's among quarterbacks when things are muddy. So he goes from elite to the worst of the worst when there's pressure. Throw in the fact that now Darius Clemens, who is their former 4-star recruit and All-American who went to Michigan, then transferred back home, he's hurt. He's got a scooter and a walking boot. I think they can't afford, we talk about depth, and Oregon's wide receiver core doesn't have a ton of depth. Oregon State, just because of their recruiting the last few years, because of the transfer portal, they're paper thin. They have 5 or 6 linemen they like on the offensive line. They have 3 or 4 receivers. The more attrition they have with injuries, the more it's going to show up. Darius Clemens is a tough one. I still think this team, could go bowling, but I think, and I don't think one injury is going to change that. But I do think there's a lot to be determined in Corvallis, and any injury kind of hurts vibes. And other than that, we're just not hearing a ton.
I was talking to a couple of people I know that were covering them. I was talking to them just as they had their second scrimmage, and no one played in it. It was all backups. I think they had 9 offensive linemen that didn't play in it. 9. I mean, my God, when I heard that number, I was like, well, how do you judge anything? So even the people that cover this team on a day-to-day basis, they don't know.
Right.
It's such a big fat unknown. I know sometimes my Beaver guys are like, well, what do you think of Oregon State? And I'm not trying to be dismissive. I literally don't know. It is a big fat question mark. And what's funny is when I talk to people that are really, really close to the team, they say the same thing. I don't know. I think there's a handful. We know they can run the ball, right? We know Hankerson, and we know they've got some depth there. Malik Murphy is going to be the best player they've had at quarterback in a while. And I think from talking to people, they like the receivers. They like the size. Although, Taz got hurt a little bit in the scrimmage, which isn't necessarily the greatest news because there were so many people out anyways, but it sounds like he's going to be fine. I think they like it on paper. Trent Walker is going to probably be Walker.
The pride of Beaverton.
The pride of Beaverton. So I think, before Clemens got hurt, I think the idea was that Clemens, Walker, and Reddix probably was the best receiving core that they'd had since, maybe, the Bolden days. And now you throw the Clemens injury into it. I think there's enough there that Oregon State fan is cautiously optimistic. But it really is the great unknown, in that you're just throwing a lot at it. You bring a lot back on defense. And so you're hoping that it's just another year with Trent Bray, and it's another year of kind of growth and development. I think that you like some players in your secondary. I think Skylar Thompson is another guy that people are pretty high on. And then you're just hoping that, that it's a deeper team than what was had last year, when it was such a disappointing season and it kind of fell off. So I wish I could give more, but there just isn't a lot to go on right now that I hear in camp about it, other than big question marks along the offensive line. And but bringing back Kavanaugh, bringing back one of the best offensive line coaches, talking to people, it does sound like they feel pretty confident they're going to be able to roll out 6 guys. The 6 that they really like. It's just a matter of, can they get healthy? Because ultimately this team is still going to want to run the ball, because it's going to be their bread and butter. Run the ball, and then hopefully Malik Murphy can actually develop into a real passing attack, because it's just something they didn't have last year.
They're going to lose guys to the portal every year. That's going to affect depth, and that's going to affect their star power. It was big to bring back Skylar Thomas. He led the team in tackles last year. It was big to bring back Trent Walker and Darius Clemens, because that's a potential, athletically, that's a potential Power 4 conference caliber duo. I mean, athletically, they're both big, they're both physical, they're both good pass catchers. Clemens being hurt, that stings. I think it's fair to say that of the teams we talk about, NFL or college, we will learn the most of any team from any team we talk about. We'll learn the most from week 1 and week 2 with them. They'll play Cal, they'll play Fresno State, and we will honestly, we will know, not only, will we go from knowing them the least, we will then know the most.
Yes.
If they win both those games in big fashion, we'll say this is probably a bowl team, because those were their 3rd and 4th toughest games. If they get slaughtered in those games, it could be a really long season, because you're probably going 0-4, because Texas Tech and Oregon are better than Cal and Fresno State, and that's who you have the next 2 games. We're going to learn a ton about them. And I think until then, Oregon State fan just needs to hang on. The one thing I will say, talking to people, they're not deep, and they know that. And you know how we know they know that? One, people are saying it. And two, they're holding out their entire two deep because they along the offensive line, because they know if they have to get in to O lineman 8, O lineman not, they're in big trouble.
Yeah.
You lose your depth because guys transfer in the transfer portal, and you lose your star power. So you keep that like tier 2, tier 3 guy in your program. They don't have enough of those to feel really good about when, oh, we're missing 2 guards and a tackle. We'll be fine. I don't think they feel that way. Yeah. And that's why every injury kind of shines an even bigger spotlight, because a guy like Clemens was an All-American. Clemens went to Michigan. I mean, in terms of athletic star power, they don't get much better on the roster. And him being down and potentially being down for a while is a bigger deal than you might think. But again, we know so little. We will find out week 1 and week 2. And until then, hang on to your hats.
Good thing is, at least in that second scrimmage, even though it was essentially backups, the defense looked great. The defense had turnovers. They were physical. Bray talked about how they were setting the tone. And so that is good news, because the defense last year, and again, injuries it gutted the team. I mean, at the end of the year, I mean, I don't know if they had defensive linemen. So at least that was something that I took out of that as a positive thing, that the defense was physical, flying to the ball. And it is probably going to be by committee, but you found a little bit of a pass rush there. And so again, maybe just one of those things it's this time of the year, you want the defense to be ahead of the offense in camp. And so even if it was backups, maybe a good sign out of Corvallis that the defense really set the tone in the second scrimmage this weekend.
You and I both really like the Washington Huskies, but as it turns out, nobody on any topic likes anything as much as Washington Husky fans like Damon Williams Jr. Yeah. I saw something that they were upset that he was listed as the number 2 quarterback in the Big Ten. It was like, how is he not number 1? So can we pump the brakes just a little? Like, I really like the upside. I think there's some Kyler Murray vibes there. I really, really like him. Like, I think we both do. I think we both think he's potentially an all-conference guy as soon as this year. But when we are talking about how much he's proven, it's still not a lot.
He started 2 games. I mean,
and he looked good in a couple of those games. I thought he actually played better than his numbers looked when he played against Oregon. I know he didn't, he got sacked a ton. He hangs onto the ball too long. That's something he's got to fix. But the hype, the vibes, I have to say, are off the chart. I think they're just feeling the fumes of the Seahawks, and it's like, Huskies too, we're going to be great all over the board. I really like this team. I think, as we talked about with the NFL team, they're right in that window that could win, 60 to 90% of their games this year in the regular season, right in that successful, anywhere from minor bowl to maybe being the shocker college football playoff team. Unlikely, but possible. But if we're talking vibes, I'm telling you, Husky fan is feeling themselves right now.
Yeah. So this is how great you fan bases are, right? So first is 2 scrimmages, right? First scrimmage, Damon Williams can't be stopped, right? Best player in college football history. Oh my God, did you see it? And Denzel Boston didn't even play, and it didn't matter. Damon Williams is that good. Get us fit for Big Ten rings. So the second scrimmage rolls around, and the defense plays much better. And Damon Williams didn't necessarily look great, right? It was kind of a down scrimmage for him. But it wasn't that Damon Williams did anything poor. You know what
of course
it was.
Not.
Defense! Defense! Oh my God, it's back! Purple Rain! Oh, it's a defense! A defense last year that was had no pass rush to speak of, and brought in all these new starters. I mean, there's 7 new starters on the squad.
A whole bunch of they brought in 8 or 9 transfers. Not all of them will start, but they brought in a whole bunch of transfers.
A ton of transfers, and so now the narrative is that don't worry about Damon Williams. Damon Williams is still fine. This defense, on the other hand, it's nasty. That's what I love out of fan bases is when offense plays poor, it's because the defense was great, and vice versa. But I am really high on UW, and I do think they have really good vibes right now. Talking to people up there and following the team, people are pretty stoked.
They're really excited. It's the excitement in the voice. It's not just the hey, I think we might be pretty good. It's that oh, we're pretty good. It's going to be good. There's an excitement to it, man.
There's an excitement, right? You have a 2-headed monster in Adam Muhammad and Jonah Coleman, which are 2 really good backs. They're very high. And I mean, Coleman probably is a top 2 or 3 back in the entire Big Ten. Dude's an
He's
absolute beast.
really good. Yeah.
They really like they think this receiving core that they're going to have is look, nothing's going to be the receiving core they had when they played for the national championship. That might have been the best receiving core this side of Ohio State, but it's a good receiving core. They like their tight ends. The offensive line is coming around a little bit, and you know him from recruiting, but John Mills is a freshman that they paid a lot of money to get out of Texas. And this kid's 6'6", 320. It sounds like he is going to start at left guard.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like Mills basically has won this job over Paki Finau, even though it sounds like Finau is going to play too. And it could be one of these two where they think Miller eventually is going to kick out to one of the tackle spots. They're like saying sky's the limit for this kid. So you add him into the lineup with the two Hatchet brothers. They like their O-line. Again, don't know if it's going to be like an elite O-line, but it shouldn't be last year's O-line, which was dreadful.
If it's Big Ten average.
It's Big Ten average.
That's a huge up. Weren't they last in the Big Ten in sacks allowed? I mean, they were terrible.
Terrible. So Carver Willis coming in. The dude's he's a solid player from Kansas State. He will be he's not going to be elite, but he's going to be solid. I think, again, with the fact that you're going to have a rotation in the middle with some depth, and then they think that John Mills is just going to keep getting better and better. When you play as a true freshman and you're going to start week 1, and that's what this sounds like, kid can play. And to
be clear, just from the recruiting side, I heard buzz that they were making a major move to get him in the NIL era. That means one, were recruiting the heck out of him, but two, they spent. They really believed that he was a necessary piece.
Yes.
So, by the way, that's good evaluation. I know people get upset about that. Like, oh, they were big spenders and the guy worked out. Of course he did. A lot of guys there's a lot of money spent on guys who don't do much their freshman year. So if you're going to go out and get an O-lineman and spend, and he's going to start from day one, that's good evaluation by your coaching staff. It just is.
And then with Damon, I think the idea too is that he can protect the O-line a little bit because he's such an athlete, and that you can have a mobile pocket. So really a lot to like about this UW offense. If the O-line, if Mills can kind of bring some stability to that, and you're bringing in Gary and Hatchett, the brother of Landon Hatchett, who is going to be the starter. So you do that there. So I think they're not in love, but they're happy. They're satisfied with having, like you said, a Big Ten average O-line, which should be good enough for that offense. And then on the defense, again, I think coming out of that scrimmage, take it for what it's worth. A lot of buzz that you've got some guys that are really going to round into form. And if you want one name to keep an eye on, last year he missed all but 3 games with 2 bad toes. He had 2 turf toes. Keep an eye on Zach Durfee. He's an older guy. He's been in the program, but he's a get off the bus sort of guy. When you look at him, he just looks the part. He looks like a Bosa brother. And they're saying that right now he just appears to be unblockable, that he could be a giant difference maker for him. And then they have an Ui Ungagale as well. And look, he's the lesser of the brothers.
He's somewhere between a DJ and a Mateo.
And then the other one is they really like this secondary. You mentioned that they brought in a bunch of guys. They got a guy, Alex McLaughlin, they brought in from Northern Arizona, and he was supposed to be a backup. And they say all this kid's doing right now is making plays in camp. He's probably going to end up being the starter. And then you take a look at their corners between Prysock and Takario Davis. Dude, they just got big. I mean, these are Christian Gonzalez type corners. You got 6'4", 6'5", long condors out there. So you throw in Ryan Waters, the new defensive coordinator coming over from Purdue, that's going to throw a lot of funky looks, 2-3-man fronts, pressure coming from different areas, because they're probably going to have to get pressure from different areas. But right now they are so high on this secondary that they think that they can play some coverage and really take some chances up front. So that lot of good sign, I think, because they liked what the offense was doing, the fact that the defense kind of dominated this last scrimmage. I think if you're a UW fan, that's what you want to hear, is that the defense was able to make what should be a really good offense look kind of ordinary. And because that, to me, was the 2 big questions coming to UW, defense and O-line. And I'm not sure. I think right now, I think they say that maybe their D maybe has answered that question maybe a little bit more than the offensive line. We'll see what happens once you get into live bullets, but and they do have to find a consistent pass rush, and maybe that's Durfee, or maybe they do it by committee. I think kind of one of the things I'm hearing is outside of Durfee, they may not have a Big Ten kind of player, but they're going to kind of do hockey rotations. They're going to run lines. It's going to be one of those, hey, we're going to play 8, 9 guys, and we're going to cycle through. So you may see mass substitutions along that front 7 and just kind of waves of fresh bodies and try to do it that way and through scheme, because maybe if there is one thing, the top end talent is there on the back half of the defense. Not sure if it's there on the front side just yet. And so that's going to be with scheme and with effort. And so I guess that's what they're saying is, hey, man, you're going to be in there for 4 plays. You go in there with your hair on fire, and when you're gassed, we'll bring in 3 new guys.
Hockey rotation.
We're just going to send fresh bodies. So good vibes right now. I would definitely say out of camp right now, UW is really feeling themselves, and
yes,
we'll see what happens. I think this could be a sleeper team in the Big Ten. I'm pretty high on them. But again, vibes can fool a lot of people. We'll see what happens once, and it's we 2 weeks away. And that's the cool part. We're 2 weeks away from this.
I know, it's incredible.
And then we don't have to do this reporter, this scrimmage. We actually get to see what happens when you line up and play some real football.
Tacario Davis is really an X factor. He played at Washington for a few years there. At Arizona for 3 years there. 6'4" corner. Really, really good as a sophomore, like All-American good as a sophomore. Yeah. Last year he decided to stay, and you can kind of see it, and people who evaluate his tape for the draft say about week 4, week 5, he went, we're not really going anywhere. Yeah. And I'm definitely going somewhere, in the sense that I'm hitting the portal, and the effort was minimal at best. So if he returns to being what he was as a sophomore, he's a 6'4" All-American outside corner. Yeah. And that makes a huge difference. So watch him early. If he's an impact player for them, and that secondary is good and they can really cover, they might elevate that front 7 to the point that it allows them to do their line change thing. And they're just aggressive, and they kind of develop and figure it out over the course of the season. This is a defense that I think will get better in the second half of the year. And this is an offense that I think should hit the ground running. So as long as that defense really is kind of ahead of the offense, that would be a phenomenal sign, because you wouldn't expect that based on kind of the depth chart and what's returning. So if the defense is figuring it out, that's an awesome thing to see. We will have 2 episodes this week. I know last week we did 1, and that was a 7-year-old's birthday and a trip to see Otani for Sook. That's what kept us from recording that second one. But we will record one either Thursday or Friday. Look for that wherever you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Sook, thank you for joining me for a vibes check. I think it is important to, again, remember that nothing we said here in terms of vibes means that we think any team is doomed or that any team is going to be crowned champion. This is a pure vibes check. No. So appreciate you joining the show, and we'll see you later in the week.